Hi, welcome to Pro Shop Talk. I'm Daniel. I'm the technical director here with RW Supply and Design. And in this series, we're looking at some alternative stains for hardwood floors. So we're going to both be investigating some of those alternative stains, talking to the relevant vendors, and then I will also be trying to demonstrate the application of those stains based on what the vendors tell us. Today we're talking with Micah Lohberg, who works for Loba. Micah is a rep for Loba, but Micah's also been a contractor for a lot of years, and so has a lot of real world application. So welcome, Micah.
Thanks.
Stain is one of those products that has been the same for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. Guys use just a regular oil-based stain. There's really only a few big names out there. So alternative stains, I think, can be something that's scary to guys. So a lot of alternative stains are hard to apply. And then there's also the if it ain't broke, why fix it mentality around stains. But you guys are going to be bringing to market an alternative stain that you guys have. So tell me a little bit about that stain, just how it's different, and then we'll delve into questions that I have about that, because I'll be actually trying to apply it.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. So ours is, every stain's gonna have pigment and some sort of solvent in it, whether it's oil-based or not. Ours is an alcohol-based, so it's pigment and solvent.
Yep.
And the benefit to ours is absolutely gonna be the dry time on it, which is gonna be a pretty hard dry time for anyone to beat. And then just knowing that we're in a water-based, a waterborne world, water and oil don't necessarily mix well unless the oil is completely dry. And so we had to, we have to have an alternative to help contractors, more successful with their dry times, and, being able to get someone out of a house an hour sooner, or a day sooner, is a huge benefit.
Gotcha. And because of that quicker dry time, you can get on it quicker with like water-based finishes without as much fear of adhesion issues and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, no matter what the color is, whether it's white or brown or black, it's still going to dry in that same 1 hour dry time. Okay. So that's, a gigantic benefit in our waterborne world.
With a lot of products, stain not being an exception to this, contractors are afraid to switch to something new.
Right.
And especially with stain, like that's a part of the flooring process that's easy to mess up from like a color consistency point of view, lap lines or having a halo around the room, things like that. So with your stain, I guess the point of question is it going to be way harder for me as a contractor to apply than the other stains that I've been applying for years?
I try not to have somebody necessarily change the way they're doing it. I think the easiest for us is to have you stain it exactly how you've been staining, with a couple of pointers here and there. But because it's an alcohol base, it's going to dry much quicker. And so you're just doing smaller sections. You're not going to go put on 500 or 1,000 feet and then go back and buff it back off again. Gotcha. Because the solvent's going to be dry and gone, and it's just have pigment to deal with. So I think the benefit to ours is going to be or a good way to explain it is once the pores are filled up with pigment, the rest is just excess and that has to come off. With ours, that excess that might be on there, call it a smear or something like that you might have to go back and touch up, it's just extra pigment. And so you just wipe that pigment back off again, reactivate it, and call it good.
Gotcha. With it being alcohol based, is it going to be as offensive to my nostrils? Like, am I going to be breathing in that solvent smell?
Yep. And it is a higher VOC in the first hour.
Okay.
And so we'll be launching it a little bit more direct at the beginning of the year with all those numbers involved. But within the first hour, you're cutting down by like 75% of your VOC. So in the beginning, it's not going to be any different than an oil-based stain is going to be as far as like what you're breathing in. Of course, like you should be wearing a mask and be protecting yourself no matter what you're doing.
Gotcha.
But you know, to be honest, it's alcohol, so it's going to have that stronger smell, but that smell's gone. It dissipates so quickly that in an hour, once you go back in to coat it, it's no longer there, you know? And so, you know, by the next day, the homeowner, when they walk in, it's no longer there as well, which is a huge selling point.
Gotcha.
Although, you know, might seem like a higher VOC in the beginning, how we're going to show you guys at the beginning of the year is how quickly that's gone and how much safer that actually is.
So walk me through how I need to apply this. So first of all, what are the different methods I could apply this stain?
You can either do wipe on, wipe off like traditionally, or you can buff it on, buff it off.
Okay.
With the pad. So I like people, you know, of course, let's try it on a 300 foot or 500 foot kitchen or something like that first, and wipe it on, wipe it off. Then you can get to know the product and how it's doing. It doesn't take a long time to transition over to it and understand, okay, this isn't a big deal. You cannot lap it. And so you could go into a room and do one bedroom at a time and wipe the edges and then go back in with your buffer and buff that in. You cannot lap it.
Does it reactivate? Like as you're buffing the new stuff on the old, does it reactivate and allow you to?
Yep, you will not have that stop mark. It's going to reactivate that hard line, and then you will not have that lap. It won't build on itself either. So once the pores are filled, it's done.
Yeah.
It's not going to build anymore, and the pigment that may be left on top will reactivate and easily come back off again.
Gotcha.
It's absolutely impossible to lap on itself.
So buff on, buff off. So use a carpet pad?
We stay away from the carpet pad because it has plastic in it. It has polypropylene in it, which might react with the alcohol, and it's really just going to start chemically reacting and drying it like immediately.
Okay.
So we'd rather use like a beige pad or something a little bit more absorbent, like just a regular pad, or actually it doesn't have to be that absorbent at all.
Gotcha.
It's because once that off gases, it's gone. You don't have a liquid left in the end. So call it 1,000 square feet, and it's just the person wiping the edges. On a normal oil-based stain, they're going to go through several rags, where with the alcohol stain, you're going to use like one set of rags for the entire job because that liquid is no longer there. It's just pigment.
Gotcha. Okay. So on the buff on, buff off, don't use a carpet pad, use a peach pad.
Yep.
And then the buff off, that's the buff on. With the buff off, do you use a pad as well? Or do you use a rag?
I'm using the same pad.
Okay.
And I might change my pad a couple times, but me personally, I'm using the same pad, and when you do end up getting pigment buildup, you can flip it and change it.
Okay.
But I'm called 1,000 square feet. I'm probably using 2 pads, both sides for the entire job.
Oh, interesting. So when you buff on, you're buffing on with the pad, but you're evening it out with that pad. There's really no like get a different pad and buff off part.
Not in my experience with it.
Okay.
If you had a way too much stain on the floor, then you can get something more absorbent to get that off. But in my experience, it's just using one pad, and it doesn't take more than like 100 square feet to completely grasp what's going on, and then it's cruising from there.
And then you also said, wipe on, wipe off. So I assume you could wipe on with a 10-inch pad, wipe on with a rag, wipe on with some sort of applicator,
right,
and then wipe off with a clean rag.
Yep. Some people are applying it with like a lamb's wool. Some East Coasters have been doing that. But personally, I'm just pouring it into the middle of my pad, and I'm putting it on, and I'm actually taking it right back off with the same pad almost. But it's nice to have a pad with you, and like anything, you're going to evolve it how you want to evolve it. Like me and my best friend that grew up doing floors together, we're coating different with the same result in the end. So you have to evolve how you want to evolve with it, but an easy evolution.
Gotcha. What happens if I spill part of the stain over here and I'm not going to get to that part of the floor for a little bit?
Yep.
Like now I got a dark spot here. Do I need to worry about that?
Nope. I'm just going to say, please do it,
Yeah.
Try to make it fail and do everything that your worst case scenario possibly could be. I've done thousands of square feet where we had cutting guys cutting in the entire job well before the hours before the buffer got on it.
Okay.
So go ahead and, you know, pour a big puddle or write your name in it, whatever you want to do, and come back to it an hour later, and it'll absolutely reactivate, and that line will 100% go away.
Can one person put it down in a house?
Yep, no problem.
So if I don't have a guy I'm working with, I could cut in the whole house,
Yep.
and I can buff in the whole house?
That's what I would be doing.
Okay.
Yep, I'd be cutting in, you know, not probably the whole house, but within reason. I'm definitely going to do a room. I'm going to go cut in an entire room.
Yeah.
Stage myself in the other room, pull my buffer in, and then buff out that room, and then jump to the other room.
Do you tape off in the doorway, or
No.
do you just buff in?
Not necessary.
Blend in the doorway.
No,
Okay.
be as sloppy as you want to be. There's absolutely no danger in lap lines, and so I don't care even like in a refrigerator or something like that. Roll the refrigerator out, do that zone, come out 6 to 8 inches or something like that, past the refrigerator. You can coat it and whatever, and roll that fridge back, and you'll never have to worry about that. You can come back a week later and it's going to blend in.
Gotcha. How about repairability? If you have to do spot repairs in a floor for whatever reason, is it going to be very similar?
Easy, yeah, similar. Say you have some flingers from your buffer or something like that, and you go in and you see, okay, I flung around this corner or something, or you caught a wall or something like that, and you got some drips that flung out. Easiest way is to pour it onto a rag, kind of let it off gas for, a minute, and then just go and lightly start reactivating that. If you start scrubbing and you're crushing grain, it may look different, especially if you water pop the floor or something like that. But if you just lightly reactivate that puddle, or that drip or flinger or whatever it may be, all that is pigment. There's no liquid. So all you're doing is reactivating that pigment, and it immediately will go away.
Gotcha.
It's,
okay.
Be gentle.
Yeah.
It's, if you do start getting on it, like I said, in crushed grain, then it might look lighter, but it's as simple as like wet sand it or something like that. Grab a piece of 100 grit and go ahead and sand into it.
Let's say you have to do a board repair later on. Pull an old board out, put a new one in.
Yep.
You're just going to sand all that area, maybe a couple boards on either side or whatever, flat with the same grit you've used,
Yep.
and then reapply?
Yep.
Okay.
Try your best to just follow the system that you followed in the sanding sequence. Follow your sanding sequence, and of course if you water pop, and if you do have a halo, the wet sanding comes into play. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Grab a piece of hand sand, and you're just literally sanding it in until you get the right grain consistency, so it's taking it the same way.
Gotcha. I guess that's another question is, you would recommend water pop?
It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter to me if you water pop or not. That's completely up to the look you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to make a difference. Of course, it's a more consistent grain pattern, but it's not going to make a difference in
Gotcha.
in the way the stain performs.
Gotcha. As long as your sanding is even. If you're not water popping, your sanding has to be,
Yep.
On point.
Yeah, most people now, if they're going into the mid, if you're doing a white or a gray or black or something like that, or a mid brown or above,
Yep.
then of course most people are water popping just to help with consistency, but
Gotcha.
it doesn't matter to us.
Can you put 2 coats of stain down, or would you ever put 2?
You could, you could. If it came out blotchy or something and just something funky happened, you're just reactivating everything, and say you missed some areas or something funky like that, or ran out of stain, or try to pull it too far, you could go back over it again. Again, you're filling the pores of the wood, and once the pores of the wood are filled, it's not going to take any more, so the rest is excess. So it's not necessarily going to get much deeper if you double stain it.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other differences that you could think of between how somebody would coat with a classic oil-based stain versus the alcohol base that you guys have?
Just your open time. Your open time is shorter, and so instead of staying 500 feet or 1,000 feet before you go back to buff it off, you're going to work in smaller,
Gotcha.
more 100 square foot kind of zones.
Okay.
But once you're done with those zones, you're done.
Yeah. Is there any significant difference in what types of finishes or sealers I can put over your stain? I mean, I'm sure obviously you'd recommend your finishes, your sealers as, the system that's endorsed with your stain. Guys are probably going to put anything they can think of over the top of it.
Right.
So is there anything they should avoid? that you can think of?
Not that I know of right now on the technical side. I mean, this is a waterborne stain. This is for water-based, and easiest way to explain it is alcohol and water mix. Oil and water don't mix when the oil's dry.
Yeah.
So, as long as your oil-based stain is dry, you're always safe. But the problem that comes up is that a lot of times that, you jump on it too soon or something like that. So it's just a safer way for our contractors to, their evolution into waterborne. It's been 25 years or more of guys finally getting more into the waterborne side of things. And so now we're dealing with, a whole different aspect of it when it comes to the stain. And that's why we brought the stain, because it is the safest stain in the industry.
So that brings up another question or concern in my mind, would be water and water blending. Is there any chance for pigment pull when I put a water-based finish over the top of your stain, especially if I'm dragging it with like a T-bar or a pad or something? Can I potentially pull that pigment?
Say your worst case scenario, you left a bunch of stain on the floor. It's gonna slurry into the water and you might get a turn or something like that. But I mean, in the rare instance of being able to have that much pigment on the floor, I think we'd get the call before and they'd say, hey, it looks a little bit sloppy.
Yeah.
But it would absolutely have no issue. You could walk back in and coat it, and the water and the alcohol is still going to end up marrying itself and off-gassing like it's supposed to off-gas.
Gotcha. So, at most with that color, might get into the finish, but if you apply the finish evenly,
No problem.
It might be hard to see or harder to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm talking very, very extreme situation, which I have not come across yet.
Yeah. So. Gotcha. Well, speaking of things you haven't come across yet, or maybe that you have come across yet, if somebody's going to mess up your stain, I'm sure all the guys out there that are going to use it are going to find creative ways to mess up your stain. How are they going to do that? Or what are the easiest pitfalls that they could avoid?
You can't jump on it too soon. I'd say the problem that you would have is if you didn't do your repairs now.
Yeah.
If you walk back in, you have like scratches or something that needs to be fixed, or puddles or a smear or something like that from not taking off all the pigment, and you just decided to go ahead and coat it, that's where your failure is going to be. So I'd say the number one is going to be not fixing your problems today. Don't say I'm going to fix it before the final. Fix it while the stain is dry. And that's not a brand related thing either. It's like, fix your problem when the stain is just the stain. Once you put finish on top, it's almost impossible to like make a perfect repair, no matter who you are.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for guiding me through this. I'm gonna put the claims to the test and
can't wait.
Try to get dirty on a panel.
Cool, man.
So appreciate that. Thanks for joining us for Pro Shop Talk. I don't know how to do outros. This is Daniel.